Hello, and welcome to Virtual Birding. It is peak migration here in Northwest Ohio at the biggest week in American Birding Festival. And as we're in the warbler capital of the world, we'll be looking for a warbler today as our target bird, the Blackburnian Warbler. So we'll be looking for that really flame orange throat, that big white wing bar on the male, and a really beautiful bird that has a lot of meaning to me personally. But before I get into that, let's talk a little bit about where we'll be birding today. So here at the biggest week, probably the most famous location is the McGee Marsh Boardwalk, but it's quite crowded and I am not going to blur out that many faces, so we're going to go to another one of my favorite spots, which is the Woodlot at Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge. We'll start out walking down this little corridor here where there's oftentimes a ton of warblers, followed by circling around through the woods in this area that's a little more open, has a lot of logs, and often can be great for thrushes. And finally, we'll bird a little bit in the marshes that are around the woodlot and see if we can't get some water birds. So let's get started. Right away, I see a bird up on the snag up ahead, so we'll take a look at that. Out here, we wouldn't expect it to be our first warbler, but it is certainly not. It's a mourning dove sitting up there. So we'll keep going, get into the woods, see what else we can find. There's a bird landing at the top of the tree. We have another bird of the open areas around the woodlot, the red-winged blackbird. We'll probably be hearing plenty of them today, and this one's certainly singing. Oh look, as it turns, you can see there's actually a band on that bird. They do a lot of banding around here, so we have found one of their banded birds. Another bird that likes the outside of the woodlot. We have some American robins with a northern cardinal flying through. So let's head into the woods, see what else we can find. Got a couple more birds there on the path. Take a look at those. There's a nice look at some brown-headed cowbirds with two males on the left with the black bodies and brown heads. And that dusty looking brown bird is the female. And here we have another bird, which is one that can be pretty tricky to see, although it's very common in this area, the warbling vireo. You can see that very plain face on that vireo, which will separate it from some of the other ones we could find in the woodlot today. Now that we're into the woods a little bit, we'll start looking for warblers. You can hear common yellowthroat, and there's our first Blackburnian Warbler singing, so let's see if we can spot it up here in the trees. And there it is, right away, our target bird. Really nice, bright orange throat on that bird. Moved off a little quicker than I'd like, but if we're seeing them that early, maybe we'll have a chance at more. And here's a yellow rump warbler, one of the ones that we've been seeing all winter. I picked Blackburnian Warbler as our target bird today because it's a really meaningful bird for me, especially in this place. As I came here when I was 15 years old with a teacher that enjoyed birding and saw Blackburnian Warbler, and it is what made me decide to become a birder. So without that, this video probably also wouldn't exist. But here we have another amazing warbler, the Cape May. Got that really bright yellow, the streaks, and that chestnut on the face. Definitely another one of my favorites. Yeah, Blackburnian Warbler is what we call a spark bird for me, which is a bird that sort of sparks your interest in birding. And I saw it here before there was a festival, and that is what sort of changed everything for me and set me on the track that I'm on today. Now you can see there's that trail down to the right. That is where we'll loop back, but before that we've got this nice brown thrasher working its way down the trail. And a little bit further down, thought I saw some movement. Oh, there they are. A few white-crowned sparrows very distantly. You can see the black and white stripes on the top of their head. Maybe when we get down a little closer, we'll get a better look. But for now, looks like some birds moving up in the trees here. And the first one we got our binoculars on is a really fantastic one, scarlet tanager. Just absolutely glowing red up there in the first morning sun. Got Got the nice black wings separating it from summer tanager. There's definitely a lot more birds moving. It seems like we've got a little bit of a mixed flock. Here's another Blackburnian Warbler. Again, not the best look, but certainly easy to identify with that bright orange throat. And what do we got here? It looks like a black-throated green. You can see the yellow face and the black throat. The green is on the back, and not the most green you've ever seen, but you can certainly see where it gets the black-throated part of its name. There's another bird there. Again, that might be the same Blackburnian Warbler, but that's a little bit better look at it. You can sort of catch that orange throat catching the sun like a flame. Very, very pretty bird. Certainly easy to tell why this is many people's favorite species of bird. And although I don't know that I really have a favorite species of bird, it is certainly the bird that I tell everybody is my favorite species. Gotta have some answer to that question. Alright, let's see what else is moving through up here. A little harder to see, but got a little black and orange Halloween colors of a male American redstart. Hopefully we'll get a better look at that one later. And there's another redstart in there. Maybe the same one moved, but still not showing all that well. Got a much better look at a northern Parula there. Very nice blue in color and even singing for us. A lot of these warblers foraging up here seem a little more focused on food on this somewhat chilly morning than singing, but that one is definitely obliging with a nice song. So there's our American redstart. That was a little bit better, but still pretty quick. They're definitely darting around up there in the trees. Sometimes these mixed flocks can be pretty hard to follow. There we got a nice bay-breasted. You can see that nice sort of reddish bay color on the breast. Different than a chestnut-sided warbler that only goes down the side. There's a nice bright orange Baltimore Oriole. A little bit bigger bird there up in the top of the tree. And here's another warbler, it looks like. We were just talking about chestnut-sided warbler. There is one. And it's singing as well. You can see that nice chestnut down the side, the yellow cap, a little bit of black on the face. Very pretty little warbler, nice male. See, still a couple birds moving here. I feel like we haven't laid our binoculars on, and they're very difficult to see, but there's a Nashville warbler hopping up in there. You can see very yellow. When it pops up, you can get a little bit of that gray cap, and if it was a little closer, you'd see a nice white eye ring. There was a Blackburnian in the corner as well. Here we have a bird that looked like a warbler at first, but it's a little ruby-crowned kinglet. All gray, twitchy little bird with a white eye ring. Just a ton moving in here. Here we have another vireo, not unlike our warbling vireo, but you can see a little bit of dark through the eye. There's a little bit of yellow on it, not very much. Sometimes they can be much more yellow, but that one was a little more plain, but a good Philadelphia vireo. There is a really tough one to see. You can see those streaks down that yellow breast on the side. Nice magnolia warbler male. And something down here lower in the brush. It's a beautiful Lincoln sparrow. I always say these look like a song sparrow, but instead of using a broad Sharpie, it's marked with a fine tip Sharpie. And there's a female black-throated blue warbler. You'd be forgiven if you didn't get an ID on that one. Pretty quick, a little bit dulled. Certainly nothing like the bright, beautiful male. There's our Nashville warbler again, singing a little bit. And there you can see the yellow belly and throat, as well as that gray head, just a little bit better. Definitely a better look than our first one. Something coming down that open branch. We got a red-breasted nuthatch there. Close, but in the background you can just barely see an eastern fox squirrel. When I was actually in the woods, I didn't notice that fox squirrel at all. But yeah, sitting back in there, maybe moving along with the warbler flock. Not always you get a mammal in a mixed flock. Here's our Baltimore Oriole again, but I think he's sort of bringing up the rear. It seems like most of the birds have moved on at this point in that mixed flock, which was quite a good one, which is why I come to this spot. It is definitely a nice quiet spot during a very busy week of a festival, and can be just as good as the boardwalk. Definitely a lot of species here. Here we have more cowbirds, and these ones are doing their display. pretty backlit, so hard to say. But definitely the two on the right were males. His yellowthroat's been singing, so we might as well get a look at it. And there it is, sitting in that little willow. You can see its nice little robber mask and yellow throat. That gives it its name. Got that witchetty, witchetty, witchetty song. And alright, we'll keep making our way down. Still a few warblers singing in here, but hopefully when we turn the corner and head down the lane, we'll get a few more things. It's often where first thing in the morning birds move, so it's definitely the spot worth coming to first. There's a couple birds out that way. Got a gray catbird there, and then a few sparrows. You can definitely see a couple of white crowned sparrows, but that one that just hopped furthest to the right is a white-throated as well. Definitely a bird we're familiar with here on virtual birding. American goldfinch singing there. With so many birds there at the beginning of the trail, it's hard to say what'll be here, but it seems like a few things flying around as something just flew over our head that we weren't able to identify. Looks like a warbler maybe working its way along the edge just up ahead, so we'll take a look. And it's actually one of the harder ones to get here. Definitely a bird I'd expect to see eventually, but Wilson's warbler, with its little black cap, can be one that's somewhat tricky to see, so that's always a fun find. Definitely a great bird, one I actually hadn't seen yet this spring so far, so good to get the first one out of the way. Hopefully there will be many to come as I continue to bird the festival. Definitely some warblers still singing in here. Can hear a couple birds still chipping around, but it seems like a lot of things are moving quite fast overhead, not really stopping, but there does seem like a bird just stopped in that tree just up ahead, so we'll take a quick look at that. Blackburnian Warbler singing, so maybe that's what it is, but we could use a better look still. But definitely not a Blackburnian Warbler, all yellow, but it looks like it's got that gray cap of a Nashville and that white eye ring, and that bird looks the same, so two Nashville warblers moving around up there. Great crested flycatcher just called, that little weep call. That would be a fun one to see, so as we get a little further down the trail where it seems like it was coming from, hopefully we'll be able to get a look at that. But for now, it seems to be a couple of birds moving in this gap on the other side. They're pretty tough look, but it's a chestnut-sided warbler preening in there, now moving off. You can still see a little bit of that chestnut on the side, and certainly that yellow cap. Got another bird a little closer. And here we got a palm warbler. This one's the western subspecies of palm warbler, so it doesn't have that bright yellow belly of the one that we saw on the last episode of Virtual Birding. We'll keep looking here. Seems like we got another smaller mixed flock. And there's a Blackburnian Warbler there, fluttering around. Again, nice flame orange throat, really shines in the morning sun, making that bird very easy to identify. Some cowbirds chattering. And got another vireo. This one looks like a blue-headed vireo, which is a very, very cool bird. The blue of the head is a little bit more blue-gray in my opinion, but that nice white spectacle definitely sets it apart from a lot of the other vireos. Something down in the bushes really close to us, and we have another ruby crown kinglet, but this one you can see that bright red ruby crown, which again is not a thing I often see on kinglets, so it's always fun when you see what that bird was named for, because more often than not, even if you see the top of the head, you don't see that ruby crown. And there's a very, very pretty oriole, although it moved off a little quicker than I'd like. Let's see if we can't get a second look at that bird before it flies off. Yeah, really nice bright one there. Very, very cool. Hopping around in the tree. There's also something up in the very tippy top of that snag, which could be interesting. But it looks like tree swallows. Definitely not what I was hoping for, but still very cool birds. Definitely harder to see while they're flying around, so nice to get a couple of them perched. But I think that mixed flock has moved on, so like we do this time of year, we'll keep moving. Oop. great crested flycatcher sounds very close now, so we'll go see if we can't see it spotted up through the trees. Usually they're sitting on an open perch, and this one is no exception. It's found a nice little spot in a gap. You can see its nice bright yellow belly. Against the sky, you can't see the reddish of its wings and tails quite as much as you'd like, but still calling away. Very, very cool. Very big flycatcher. Definitely one of my favorites this time of year. Although we do get to see them in the summer where I live, so should be able to see a few more around. Another bird just landed behind us. Could be the flycatcher, but nope, it's a blue jay. Blue jays are certainly a bird that's migrating through right now, but in the forest we're unlikely to see their really big flocks. But where I'm going to actually take you on our next bird walk, I think we'll see quite a few more blue jays, I think. So you'll have to stick around for that. Make our way down the channel. Seems a little quieter out on this end, but we've already seen quite a few birds. I don't hardly know at this point how many we've seen, but we have seen a ton of warblers, which is really what this place is most famous for. Oftentimes Northwest Ohio is referred to as the warbler capital of the world, as you can relatively easily rack up about 30 species if you spend the whole festival week here, which isn't something that's possible many other places. So definitely a really great warbler spot. Right here we have something that's pretty far from a warbler, but is up in a tree, which is a wood duck. We've definitely seen them swimming on the water, but when they nest in trees, and I'm sure that one has a nest somewhere around there, they oftentimes will actually perch up in trees, which is something I think a lot of people don't know. But yeah, very cool. See a duck in a tree. Definitely not something you see every day. We have a bird out here, and here's probably our best look so far at Blackburnian Warbler. They seem very, very common in the forest today, which is great since that's our target bird. And we hear this chickadee calling, and I think it just popped up there. Sure enough, a little black-capped chickadee. Not going to stick around very long for us, but that's alright. We're going to actually go the other direction on this trail to finish our loop, but we're going to take a little bit of a detour here. There's been a special bird down this direction that's been reported quite a few times earlier in the festival, so we'll see if we can't take a look at it. You can hear a wood thrush off in the woods. It sounds a bit distant, and those things can be pretty tough to spot, but if it pops up, we'll certainly try to take a look for it. But for now, we'll make a left up here on this little bit of a boardwalk and see if I can't find the bird that's been hanging out here. There's a cone there, which I suspect is where I'm going to need to stand, and if we look up here, there it is. Nice eastern screech owl. Always fun to find an owl roost. But let's see if we can't find another angle, take a second look at it. I feel like if I move over here, we can maybe see it a little bit better. About the same, but it's definitely a very, very cool bird. Nice gray morph. There's definitely both gray morph and red morph here, but the gray morph is certainly the more common. This robin seems quite upset. I'm not sure if it's with us or with the owl, but there it is along that pool. Looks like a male with that very, very dark head. A lot of times female robins will have a little bit of a grayer head, which is something a lot of people don't know about robins, which is that it's actually relatively easy to tell the males and females apart, as the males will have very full dark caps, and the females will have black on their heads, but won't be quite as extensive. As they get older, the black on both increases, so sometimes a young male might look a little bit like an old female, but for the most part, if you see a pair together, the one with the darker head tends to be the male. Here we have another bird as we come around the corner. This is also a scarlet tanager, but unlike that one that we saw earlier, this one's yellow with sort of those dark, dusky wings, and that's because this one is a female. Alright, we'll head back up here to this junction, and we'll keep making our way around the loop, but actually there seems to be maybe a few birds with the scarlet tanager. It might be another little mixed flock. There's another redstart, again, not giving us the best of views, but that one is a female, which is why it's not black and orange like those ones we saw before. Here we got another bird, another nice bay-breasted, a little bit obscured by the leaves. And there's a much better look at a male redstart. So there's also a male in here with those Halloween colors, nice black and orange. Another bird that, like the Blackburnian, is quite easy to identify. Very, very different than all of the other warblers. Alright, we'll keep making our way along to the little bit more open forest. And before we get there, out on one of the logs, we have an eastern fox squirrel. So that's a little bit better than the blurry view we got behind the warbler earlier. So as we get out into this area, as you could see with the squirrel, it's much more open than that lane, and the forest canopy is a little bit more extensive. And in this sort of shadowy area with all of these logs is a really good spot to see thrushes, so that's mostly what we'll be looking for. But here is not a thrush, but another beautiful male scarlet tanager, possibly following that female around. But yeah, there's quite a few thrushes we could get. At this point, hermit thrush is probably past, but veery should be around, Swainson's thrush should certainly be around, and if we're lucky, maybe we'll come across a gray cheek thrush, which in this area is the most difficult one to get. And here's our first thrush, and it looks like a veery. Didn't give us the best look, but it's kind of a little bit more reddish brown of a bird, and the speckles on the chest are very brown as well, unlike the very dark speckles of those other thrushes. I suppose the other thrush that we could get in here would be wood thrush. That's the other thrush that's around, but actually I don't tend to get them in this kind of habitat. They seem to like a little bit more dense habitat like we were over in the other area where we heard it singing. And there's a little bit better look at that veery. Yeah, you can see those speckles on the chest, very, very brown, very similar to the color of the back. Alright, well that's one thrush species down. We'll just have to keep making our way, see if we can't find a couple more. And here we have another thrush here. And this one, you can see the speckles are much darker, and that is a Swainson's thrush. If you take a look at the face, it is a very nice buffy color. And while gray cheek thrush will look relatively similar to that, Swainson's thrush has really buffy around the face versus the gray cheek, which you might imagine is gray. So here we have another Swainson's thrush, and that one, when it turns there, you can see is very, very buffy around the eye, which is how we are separating it out. So we'll keep making our way. There should be quite a few more thrushes in here. I imagine we'll see quite a few more veery and Swainson's thrushes, maybe particularly the Swainson's thrushes, as they tend to be pretty common. And there's another one there. But hopefully we will be able to pick out a gray cheek, because that is definitely a bird I have not yet seen so far at the festival, and would be a very fun one to see. So here's another thrush and another buffy cheek, so we've got another Swainson's thrush. You can see how much darker those spots are on the breast than the spots that were on that veery that we saw earlier. So that's a pretty good way to tell them apart, even though the back is also a little bit more brown instead of red-brown like the veery. Different light can kind of change that, so I always try to see the spots if I can. And here we go. Here's our gray cheek thrush. You can see very, very different than that Swainson's thrush. That right around the eye is that sort of very brownish gray versus that nice buff. And so we've got all of the species of thrush that I would expect to get. But we'll still keep an eye out. You never know when a hermit thrush might be around, or even maybe an odd wood thrush. I definitely also sometimes find oven birds in here, which can initially appear as a thrush, even though they're a warbler. And so you never know what we could find, so we'll keep keeping an eye out. Here's a bird up higher in the tree, and again, a nice scarlet tanager. They do love these big open forests, so I can't say that I'm surprised to see them in here. It's definitely another species I run into quite a bit in this kind of habitat. And here's another thrush and another buffy cheek, so a Swainson's thrush. We will keep making our way along, trying to see what we can see. A couple other things that we can keep an eye out for in here is sometimes I get rusty blackbirds in here. They tend to like this little bit of wet forest with all these logs. And another bird that I often get is red-headed woodpecker. So definitely some things to keep an eye out for. Both of those I don't get every time, so not a guarantee, but certainly something to keep your eyes open for as we walk. Here we got another thrush, and there's another veery. Again, real reddish-brown color in the spots on the chest, about the same color as the back. Definitely very different than our Swainsons and gray cheek thrushes. So there's a nice comparison. Get them all here on the same day, and definitely get to see those differences pretty clearly. Definitely my favorite place around the biggest week to look for thrushes. And here we got something else, and just as I said, one of the species I often get in here, the red-headed woodpecker. Bright red head, bright white belly, black wings with a white marking on him. Definitely the easiest woodpecker to identify. Another easy call to learn is house wren, which is singing like crazy in here. We'll see if we can't get a look at it. They can be pretty tough to spot sometimes as they're very small and a little sneaky, so... But there it is right there, up there singing away on a little perch. When you do get close enough to see them, they're usually not very afraid of people. They just are often in dense cover. So this one, happy to keep singing as we stand very nearby. And we'll leave him to it. I'm sure he's got a nest somewhere around, probably in an old woodpecker cavity. That's what they often like, although a broken branch that leaves a cavity will certainly also serve their purposes. Well, we're getting close to being finished with the Woodlot loop itself. Pretty soon, when we get to the end of this trail, we'll loop back into the grassy, narrow trail where we were before, when we walked past this little gravel path. At that point, we'll head back out onto some of the dikes that are around the woodlot and take a look at the marshes, see what we can find. But we still got some time in here. We still definitely could run into some things, so we'll keep an eye out. Sometimes when the morning gets a little bit later, the grassy trails that are leading into the woodlot can have different species, so definitely will be things worth looking for as we go. And up here, there does appear to be a bird in this grassy trail, so we'll take a look. And it is our American robin again. Again, that's probably a male, looking at that really dark cap. But certainly a bird we've seen already, so we'll keep making our way up the trail. This time we'll take the trail on the left, although we came in the right before. And there is a bird sitting in there. Almost looks like a thrush, but it isn't quite the right shape, and you can see some streaking down the side. And as it turns its head here, you can see a little bit of a rusty cap on it. So not the best look in the world, but that is an ovenbird. So there's another warbler for our warbler count. And as I put my binoculars around, you can't really see it on camera, but it took off. So I was going to try to get closer, but I think that might be the look that we get at it. It's pretty rare I see more than one ovenbird in a walk, so I think we'll just probably have to stick with that. But up here is another beautiful bird. Nice indigo bunting, nice blue male. The females would be very brown, but the males are certainly around right now in numbers. And so another really great, really pretty bird to see on this spring morning where we've had an absolute barrage of colors as we've taken this walk. Definitely a perfect time of year if you're looking for colorful birds. And this is a bird that most people think of as black, a common grackle, but really you can see on that bird it has a nice color to it too, with that blue sheen to the head and the coppery sheen on the back. Definitely an underappreciated bird. Now you can see the edge of the marsh as we keep walking up here. So we're almost out of the woodlot. There's a bird sitting there, maybe a thrush just send us out. And there's another ovenbird. As I said, I very rarely see more than one in the morning, so it must be a good migration night for them. But yeah, that's a much better look, sitting wide out in the open. There again, you can see that little bit of rusty on the cap, and the streaks going down the side. Nice white eye ring. Very, very cool little warbler. One that spends a lot of time on the ground and gets its name because its nest has sort of a side and roof on it that somebody thought looked like an oven. There we have a gray catbird working the trail ahead of us. It's a bird that we heard in the winter on virtual birding, but today's sightings are our first ones, so very cool to add it to the list of birds that we've seen. Up there in the tree, we have another tree swallow sitting on a snag. Definitely this time of year, olive-sided flycatcher is a possibility, and they like sitting up at the top of things, so always worth checking, but yeah, more often than not, it is just a tree swallow. Well, I shouldn't say just a tree swallow. They're a pretty amazing bird as well. But yeah, not an olive-sided flycatcher, which is a little bit more rare and certainly something I would love to see. So this time of year, you never know what's going to turn up, so we'll keep checking snags if we see things up there. And there goes a great blue heron off the path, making its way onto the marsh. It's a spot always worth checking, although often I don't see a ton on it. Today it looks like we've got our great blue heron flying away and a second great blue heron that it is now flown past, but it doesn't look like much else up on the marsh. But something flew past, and on the snag there we can see a downy woodpecker. You can see how short that bill is. Backlit the way it is, it's maybe not the best look, but just on shape it's quite a bit different than a hairy woodpecker. One thing I sometimes say is when you see a hairy woodpecker, you know. And otherwise, it's probably a downy. At least in this area where downy woodpeckers are much more common. Here we have a European starling working in the trail. Definitely a new one for the day list. Definitely starting to rack up a pretty high list of species here, I would say. We'll have to check at the end to see quite how many, but definitely a lot. So that is pretty fun. That is certainly something that's pretty easy to do this time of the year in this part of the world. And so I can't say I'm too surprised, but definitely glad we got a good morning for our bird walk. And there's another bird that we haven't had before, a cedar waxwing. There's 3 of them up there. One of them took off, but there's still 2 sitting up there. Again, a little bit backlit, but as they fly around, maybe we'll get a chance at another look. There's a red-winged blackbird displaying, kind of going behind the willow there for us. And up to our left, there's a bird up in the snag, and this one's a yellow warbler, which is a bird we've heard several times on our walk, but have yet to see. So good to see that nice male there, singing sweet, sweet, sweeter than sweet. Got the little orange markings on the breast. And it looks like our cedar waxwings might have come a little closer. There you go. A bird with a crested head and a black mask, and as it hops there you can see it's the yellow tip on its tail, which is always one of my favorite parts of it. Definitely very handsome birds, cedar waxwings. Alright, we'll keep moving here as that rose-breasted grosbeak sings. Be nice to catch a look at it, but I don't think it's going to cooperate for us. So we'll keep making our way along. Baltimore Oriole singing quite loud there. We'll cut across. We'll go over check the marsh across the road. It tends to be a good spot for egrets and trumpeter swan, so that's what we'll be hoping for. But before that, there's another little sparrow hopping on the ground. And there we have a much closer look at a white-crowned sparrow. They do tend to love this parking lot. It's one of the best places to find them around, so I can't say I'm surprised to see it there, but always fun. And here we have some Canada geese. But more interestingly, it looks like they've got a whole group of little babies. Super, super cute. I don't think I've ever seen more baby Canada geese than I have here in this part of the world. It is actually somewhat of a problem because both their cuteness and their boldness ends up stopping traffic quite a bit at some of these parks in the area as people stop to either take pictures or just wait for them to cross the road. They definitely are everywhere and are very, very cute. So out on the marsh, we do look like we have a great egret. And a little further along, there goes a mallard flying along the reeds. But what I don't see is any trumpeter swans. So we might have to wait till another date to get that species. They do often hang out there, but you never know. They have wings like everything else and do move around on these marshes. So if you're here, definitely keep an eye out, but I think today we probably have missed it. They're up along the tree, pretty far away. We got a Tennessee warbler, very gray underneath with that green back. Finally, I think we'll make our way along the edge of the parking lot here. I imagine we'll run into some white-crowned sparrows, and there they are. As I said, this is the best spot for them. But we'll make our way along and check down this trail. There's a species that I know will be down there that we don't have yet. This building that we just passed with all the murals is actually the bathroom, but definitely one of the prettiest bathrooms around. So we can already see some birds flying past us here, and those are purple martins. And they're out here because up ahead there's some purple martin boxes that they nest in. So you can see out there, you got a lot of males hanging around on the purple martin houses. The females are likely in there too. Some of them may still be on their way migrating back, but a lot of them may be inside the boxes with the male sitting outside guarding them. And yeah, that's really about it. But there's another bird that just landed in front of us, and it's another beautiful indigo bunting. This one's a little closer and a lot more in the sun, so it's super, super bright blue. And I think that is a good place to end it. So we'll head back to the car and wrap this bird walk up, and let's take a look at what we saw. Hard to keep track as we went, so we'll get the summary. So we had 66 species, quite a few, with 1 species of mammal. About a mile walked in 2 hours, and we saw our target bird, the Blackburnian Warbler. Now we'll run the species list, which will take quite a while, as we saw quite a bit. But anything that we didn't see but did hear will be listed as heard only, HO. Anything new will be listed with an N after it. And for a couple birds that we saw for the first time but have previously heard, we will have an S. As I often do, I think I will pick a favorite bird of the walk, which sometimes is the target bird, but today, I don't know. Blackburnian is a really good bird, and we did see a lot of them, which I love. You know, a common bird is not necessarily a bad bird. It is fun to see things over and over again, because as you saw, we didn't get the best look right away, and over time we got better looks. So Blackburnian really did show for us, but I think for me it's gonna have to be Gray Cheek Thrush. That was one I was really hoping for this morning, as I haven't had it for the festival yet, and it's definitely one I always look forward to seeing here. So I think Gray Cheek Thrush will be my bird of the day, with Blackburnian Warbler, our target bird, probably a close second. Although now that I see Scarlet Tanager, that's a pretty cool one too, and we did get some great looks at them. I don't know, it's always hard to pick on these days that we have a lot. So for our virtual birding life list, we have 145 species with 36 new ones today, 6 species of mammals with the added fox squirrel, and then 2 amphibians and 2 reptiles. Thanks for joining me on this bird walk. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and happy birding. But before we go, I thought I'd share a few other highlights from the Biggest Week Festival. Not all of the amazing birds I saw at the Biggest Week in American Birding Festival made this video, because you don't always see everything on one bird walk. So here's some of my other favorite sightings. Enjoy!